The FNRad Snowboard podcast is presented by Vans.
Oh yeah, I wanted to be absolutely not attractive to snowboarders.
Phone rings and it's Travis Rice. What do you want? Holy fuck.
And I didn't sign the contract. I just had it in my bag for a couple of months.
Maybe we need an injection of that because it'd be interesting.
They paid for my mom to go to Japan with me.
And we're all like, oh, that's just banging that over.
We pushed each other to become better.
Once you go there, you can't go back to the ski resort.
The American method is Jamie Lynn.
And I just came through and fucking hit it raw. Front three-tailed it.
Season 5 of the FNRad Snowboard podcast is sponsored by Wired Snowboards, the Boardroom Snowboard Shop, Crow's Nest Barber Shops, Anon Goggles, and Tribute Board Shop. The Boardroom Snowboard Shop offers the best selection of the best brands in snowboarding, has the most knowledgeable staff, and an extensive online store at boardroomshop.com. Go to any Boardroom location for expert boot fitting, including full heat molding, which creates boots that fit amazingly without having to break them in. Go to one of the Boardroom Snowboard Shop locations in Vancouver and North Van for all your snowboarding needs. The first snowboard photo I ever saw was Steve Caballero dropping off some wall on a Sims Lonnie Toft. That picture, I think, was taken by Tom Sims in like 1982. So there's a long history of professional skateboarders who also snowboard. And this week's guest, Rob Boyce, also known as Sluggo, is one of those guys from the early 90s, mid-90s, that had a pro model skateboard and a pro model snowboard at the same time. Other guys that had this were Danny Way, Noah Selaznick, John Cardiel. So he's in with a list of absolutely amazing snowboarders. And Rob was one of those guys too. He is comfortable in front of a camera. He's got an extensive gymnastics background. And he just has an all-around good outlook on life. I'm pleased to bring you this interview from my basement with Rob Boyce.
In those days, when I was on Airwalk, I was on Skull Skates.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I'm like, wait, Crystal Oceans?
Yeah.
And he goes, Crystal Oceans? Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, because they were made at the Never Factory.
Were they?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. But before that, they
me
were
and Devin
made...
riding basically the same board.
Oh, right. Because before the Never Factory, Crystal Oceans was actually made at Avalanche. He got a few made by...
before my time.
Yeah, so you would have been when the boards were already twin and ready to...
Right.
Like, they were those Never boards.
I had a directional board at first, but, the first Craig Kellys and things like that,
Really? Did you have a Craig?
No, well, I did have a Craig. My best friend had a Craig, and he didn't ride, so he just passed it on to me, and that was my first board.
Did you live in North Van at that time?
No, well, when I started snowboarding, I was already living in East Van.
East Van.
I was living in a basement suite.
Like, you were old enough that you'd moved out of your parents' place? Yeah.
Yeah, I had already been pro for skateboarding when I went pro for snowboarding.
Right. So, like, those... I just saw you posted a picture of the new spot, and I was like, that's when I moved here, 93.
Are we recording?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, we're already go.
Oh, right on.
Have you ever done your brother's podcast?
I have, but not recently, I guess a few years back.
Yeah, if
right
I was
when he
him,
started.
I would have you as a guest every week.
He hasn't asked me back.
I don't know what that means. Maybe we're in for a bad interview here. You're very close with your brother, yeah?
Yeah, we're extremely close.
Yeah. And was that tough in the beginning when you start to get skateboarding sponsors and that kind of thing, or was he right there with you getting sponsors and stuff too?
No, I'd say the trickle-down effect worked well for my bro. He did everything I did except for gymnastics. Like, he was a breakdancer, a really good breakdancer.
Oh, yeah.
He was a really good skateboarder. And he started snowboarding about a year before I did.
Right. He was pretty deep in it with Dawn and United and UN and Beyond and all that stuff.
Yeah, after a few years in, he was
yeah.
he was manufacturing and helping produce all their lines.
Totally. Oh, yeah, that dovetailed well into him working for RDS, too, right? Because he already had that knowledge.
He started a company years ago called, 30 years ago, called Payday.
Nice.
Payday, and it was denim snowboard pants. Because that you could do anything back then. You could throw anything at the wall and see if it sticked.
Yeah.
And he did. He had a whole bunch of people riding them, and he had international distributors, and he was going to trade shows. It's hard to run a business when you're 20 years old.
Oh, my God, it's impossible. As soon as you get some money, you want to spend that money.
Yeah.
And that's been the death of more companies than anything.
For sure.
That's incredible. So skateboarding, did you grow, okay, skateboarding was North Van for you, right? Like Seymour or Sealand and Griffin and that kind of stuff, or was it?
Well, the first place I ever rode was, it was Sealand Bowl, and I caught the bug there. I went there one day to meet a friend of mine from math class, Rob O'Sullivan, and he lent me his board, and I rolled through the bowl and slammed really hard, and I was like, oh, this is for me. So that was around February 1986. I started skateboarding.
Holy shit. That's right in the heyday of that, like, Bones Brigade. Yep. Didn't Expo 86, didn't the Bones Brigade come to Sealand?
Well, every pro that competed at the Expo 86 World Championships also competed in the Sealand Bowl contest. So we had, like, Chris Miller, Neil Blender, Steve Caballero, Tony Hawk. Oh, man, it was amazing.
That day changed a lot of, like, started a lot of people on that path, hey?
It did. Vancouver had a lot of skateboarders, but it changed the way we looked at skateboarding once we saw you could make a living from it. Like, there was a whole core group there wasn't as many skateboarders back then, at least that were serious about learning how to skate. And when we saw you could make money and be a professional skateboarder, there was a good group of 15 of us that were like, okay, this is what we're going to do.
Like, were you guys friends, or was that just all kind of happened independently?
It happened pretty much independently, but once you know who everyone's sponsored is, because there was a lot of street-style contests back then, and then once Kevin Harris opened his park, he had a lot of mini-ramp contests and vert contests, so we knew who each other were.
Yeah.
And we traveled together. We traveled to all the contests up and down the coast.
At Expo 86, was that when Kevin Harris kind of started working to get that ranch open?
Yeah, because we had the Expo 86, and then they built a vert ramp just for that event, the Expo ramp. And Kevin took that ramp, and by 1987, he'd put it in a warehouse in Richmond.
Right.
And he built an 8-foot mini ramp and had a vert ramp in there. That was the first two structures he had. And it was me, Peter Sullivan, the McKay brothers, Casey and Colin McKay, and Richard Grissett, and Sean Mortimer, a whole bunch of guys. And, it sparked a whole generation of transition skaters.
So were you sponsored through Ultimate at first, or did you land like a US direct kind of sponsorship thing?
Well, everything I ever got in skateboarding started with Kevin Harris, so you could say it was Ultimate. My first free board was a foam core Rob Roskop.
Nice.
That Kevin Harris, I guess, had ordered way too many, and they're sitting on the shelf at Ultimate. So he figured if he gave them to a few of the better guys, they'd maybe help sell. They didn't.
Yeah, I had a foam slasher. It was delicate. You didn't want to mess with those things.
And those were the blast ramp days, right? And so we wanted to blast, and as soon as you went off MFP at Sealand Bowl, you popped it. And as soon as you popped it, everything you did was like waterlogged board, basically.
Yeah, yeah. So was that kind of the first foray into sponsored snowboard stuff as well? Or, because being on Airwalk in those early days would have been killer.
It was. What happened was when I went pro for GNS back, not pro for GNS, I got sponsored amateur by GNS back in about 88.
Wow.
And
was Rankwit still on there at that time?
I think Rankwit might have been on there. I think we didn't really. He would come to Vancouver and he'd skate the vert ramp with us because we knew all the Seattle guys. Because
he's an amazing vert skater.
He's a really good vert skater and a really good guy. I've known him over 30-something years as well.
Rad.
All the Seattle guys were cool because they had vert ramps long before we did in Vancouver. So when they came up here, they were teaching us how to do things like backside airs and inverts and everything. And Rankwit was in the forefront of doing both sports at the same time.
He could have been a sponsored skateboarder. I mean, he was on Indy, but he could have been he could have had a pro career, I think.
For sure. I think he jumped on a snowboard, and because of Baker and for all the guys around him, that he just took off. He didn't really need skateboarding.
Right. Well, he said he kept it for himself. Yeah.
Yeah. No, and that's smart of him.
Yeah.
I needed snowboarding to continue skateboarding. It was the complete opposite.
Like for money-wise, you're saying?
Financially, for sure. And I went pro for Real Skateboards back in 1991. After GNS, I went to Real. And Real was really good. They were treating me good. But I went pro I was mainly a transition skater. And I went pro right when vert died. Street skating took over. And I could street skate pretty good. But I was surrounded by Colin McKay and Moses at Conan. And they were all terrain vehicles, and they were really, really good, really respected in all worlds of skateboarding. But I wasn't by any means a good street skater. I could do it, and I could fake it, and I did. I faked it. I had a bunch of street ads, heel flips, and nose slides down handrails, but no, I was by no means really good at it. I would never have got sponsored for street if it was just street. And so it was slim pickings back then as far as getting paid from real. Like, I'd get my board sales, and it would be like, it was fine. If I was making $1,000 a month, all my bills were paid. I was happy, and I was doing what I loved, and that was great. But snowboarding came along, and I did it for about a year, and then I'm like, snowboarding was banging off. Like, it was Transworld were the size of Bibles. They were so thick.
Yes. Yeah.
And I went to, because of there was a crossover effect from skateboarding to snowboarding. A lot of snowboarders really wanted to be skateboarders. It was just back then, that was the way it is. They were emulating skateboarding in a big way.
Totally. And
they looked very similar. Tricks, now you compare the two, they don't look that, except for handrails. You know, you spin 3.5 times through the air. Nothing like skateboarding. So they've gone different directions at this point. But I really, I was struggling to make ends meet. And when snowboard sponsors came my way and said, "Hey, do you want to ride for us?" I was just like, yeah. And then I ended up spending more time on my snowboard than I was on my skateboard, simply because I was getting paid so much more.
That's crazy. I remember seeing you up at Cypress, and you were on a mission. You know, like you were getting a shot. It was like a Bluebird day. There was POW. You had a photographer. You went out back where nobody was, and you're like, "Hey, here." And then I remember seeing the ad come out and being like, that's not really like a huge thing that he's, it's kind of small actually, but it was a properly laid out ad. It looked great.
100%. We used back of Cypress and the back of Seymour as our private studios.
Oh, totally.
And Jody Morris was our skate photographer. The Red Dragons had Jody Morris with us at all times. We didn't have so much a filmer back then, but we always had a photographer. And so we had more coverage up here. We were so lucky to have Jody. Like, he was a real blessing. Anytime we needed an ad, Jody was right there because he was a starving artist. He needed to get paid, so he was always down to go shoot a photo.
Sick.
And so as soon as he found out, okay, I just got to follow Sluggo up the mountain, and I'm going to make at least, like, snowboard companies were paying way more than skateboard companies for an ad at that point.
Right.
And so I got on Division 23, and they were buying ads. Their Dragons goggles was buying ads.
Oh, yeah, right.
Airwalk Boots was paying for ads. And so anytime I needed an ad, he was right there. And I ended up being in the magazines a lot. Like, I don't think I missed a Transworld magazine after I got sponsored for about 3 years.
That's crazy.
And I wasn't that good of a snowboarder.
Well, I mean, you weren't terrible. You were good.
I was terrible. Because I didn't get to go through. A lot of the guys who were snowboarding, their families skied, and they knew their way around skiing, and they knew their way around the mountain, and they knew etiquette. I was a skate rat that got plunked onto a hill and said, "There's a jump, here's a camera, go."
Right.
So when I was in the air, I was pretty good. I could, pretend I was skateboarding. But getting to the jump and after landing, you could tell I wasn't a very good snowboarder.
I remember complaining about it. I do remember complaining about it, being like, that guy gets paid to do this. But at the same time, now, all things being equal, at the end of, 30 years later, you're such a respectable skateboarder, and you're such a great person that, it's completely forgivable that...
You gave me a pass, did you? I appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, also, you've become so relevant to, such a big part of the industry, which is, being honest about wanting to make money to support your skateboarding habit, which you're a fucking pro skater and you can't make a living.
No, you couldn't
to do it.
You couldn't, and
snowboarding was easy. That's what it comes down to. Is snowboarding is quite easy.
It was back then. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to say snowboarding is easy these days. No,
right.
Not by any stretch of the imagination. It's gnarly, and you can really hurt yourself. And you could back then too, but it was mostly, we were in areas where there could be avalanches, and we had, peeps were really elementary back then. We didn't have too much training. I was put in situations that were really sketchy, like heliboarding and catboarding, and I should not have been there. I didn't have the background for it. And I survived it, so I can look back now going, Jesus Christ, that was gnarly. And not only that, I don't think I was that great of a snowboarder, but I was surrounded by the very best on the planet at that time. I had Devin Walsh, I had Kevin Sandstone, I had Kevin Young. I don't think I ever saw Kevin Young fall once. Like, I think I saw him sit on his ass once, and like he would always ride away. The worst thing he would do was touch his hand.
Yeah.
Devin never bailed.
Right.
I came from skateboarding where you bail 9 out of 10 times.
Right.
Easy.
Right.
And so, because of my gymnastics background, I could take a really good slam. Like I would eat shit a lot. If you see any of my from the old whiskey videos or any of those Whitey's videos that I was in, I was in the slam section quite a bit. I had a slam section that was as big as my part sometimes.
Come on.
If you give me enough tries, I can ride away, and that's how it worked back then.
Rad. Yeah.
And when you're in the middle of a shot and you have a photographer there, you can fake it.
Yeah.
You know.
And there's something to be said about that professional. Like a lot of people. There are people, I'm not going to put them at Devin's level, but there are people that had talent. Like you would see people out there riding with us that had talent, but had zero idea of what it meant to be a pro snowboarder. It didn't mean going faster than everybody.
No.
And blowing off photo days to be hungover or to be drinking or... Like, it meant hard work as well, which is the thing that you had in spades, was that you weren't...
I had etiquette. I know how to get the job done. If I was told I had to get a video part out or I had to get an ad or I was doing an interview, I got it done. And it gave me a mission and a purpose, and I work well with a purpose.
Rad.
You give me something I need to get done, and I'll get it done.
Yeah.
I like having an agenda of things I need to do. And that era, it was so loose, and people weren't making any real money, so how serious do you have to take it?
Right.
Right. But... These guys you're talking about, they'd go out and partying and have a hangover. Devin would go out and party, and he'd party hard, but he would get up. He'd be the first guy to get up and get to the jump, build the jump. And, that's why he's still around to this day.
I agree.
His work ethic was strong.
Yeah.
Kevin Sandstone's work ethic was strong.
Definitely.
You can tell the guys who had a really good work ethic because they're still relevant now to a certain degree. You either know them, they're respected in the snowboarding sport, and, Devin's still rocking.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, you're still crushing it in skateboarding. And it's so awesome. I just want to say it on tape. It's so awesome to see something change in my mind when I saw your wife learning how to skateboard. Because there's a part of me that's like, oh, I wish I would have learned more when I was 14. Because it seems like the foundation you build when you're a kid, once you get to that big break or whatever fall you had that like now you're scared. Everything up to that is kind of your foundation. And that you can do for the rest of your life.
Right.
But then learning, like putting a 50-50 on top of the deck of an 8-footer versus just on the coping on the inside the transition still, it's so hard to break those bad habits and learn when you're an adult.
There's a huge leap of faith skateboarding.
But seeing your wife take it, it's rad.
She's amazing. My wife is it's totally. I'm refreshed. I have a breath of fresh air. Every time I go to the skate park now, she comes with me, and I never in a million years thought I'd marry a girl that wanted to skateboard.
Right.
And I didn't know that before we started hanging out, and then she's like, "Well, I'm coming to the skate park quite a bit. Set me up a board." Next thing you know, she's dropping in on the 8-foot.
Exactly.
And I was not pushing her, and I was terrified for her. But I'm not the guy to say, hey, don't do it.
Right.
She just went in her first skateboard competition on Canada Day.
No way.
She went in the bowl contest.
Oh, sick.
In
she
North
went in the bowl
Vancouver.
series.
Yeah.
Dope.
Yeah, she was super pumped. And it's a sketchy day to be at the bowl. There's
Big
like
time.
20 guys riding the bowl, high speed.
At all times.
Snaking up, snaking down. And she was right in there with the boys. I was really
think
impressed.
that's one of the hardest things for me at a skate park is that my level's kind of low. So I'd rather be there when there's nobody there. And then as soon as somebody shows up, and you guys are the opposite of the generation that you grew up with, right? Like I know Kearns talked about Lester being kind of like aggressive at the bowl, and like you'd show up and you'd be like, hey, how do I do this? And he'd be like, well, first things first, I'm going to whip your pads in the river. Next thing, I'm going to focus your board. You're going to have to go tell your mom you got to get a new board. Like, it wasn't like, here, this is how you do it. Whereas you guys are insane like that. Like, Chalmers will teach a little kid how to drop in on a Walmart board. Whereas,
Oh, of course.
Like, you guys are beautiful people, really nice. And you came up in a rough time where skateboarding was not
having Sean Kearns as my best friend, like he wasn't my best friend at first. He was my worst enemy, my nemesis.
Nice.
Like he was so mean, but that's what the guys were like to Sean, the generation before.
Right.
Like you said, you're talking about Lester, not Lester Kasai, but Rob Lester.
Rob Lester, sorry,
And
yeah, you're right.
Who was just like, yeah, they would throw your board in the river. They would throw your pads in the river right next to the skate park. Sealand Skate Park has a river right next to it. So if anything goes sideways, they'll just throw your gear in the river.
And it's not
for
quite
reference.
right next to it. It is like you got to run down a hill and jump in an icy river to get your shit. It's a nasty thing to do to a
People
person.
don't do that anymore,
No.
folks. Like that was, 30 years ago.
Right.
Yeah.
So did Kearns have a hand in the Sluggo nickname?
He didn't, but Sean and I's one of our best friends growing up was Orion Anthony. Do you know Orion?
Yeah, he did the silk screening stuff.
Yeah, Orion silk screening. He's still in North Van now.
Yeah.
I'd only been skateboarding for a couple weeks, and I showed up at the skate park, and I'm standing on one of the banks, and he's like, "Hey, kid." I'm like, "Me?" He goes, "Sluggo, you look like Sluggo." I'm like, "Oh, okay." He goes, "Sluggo, get the fuck out of the way." And so I did, and from that day on, I've been called Sluggo.
It's incredible.
It is incredible. The skate park back then on a regular day was busy, 50, 60 kids.
Are you serious?
And he was the best back then. Him and Peter Sullivan and Sean Kearns, they had the best style. They had the most tricks. And so whatever they said, that was gold. So you're Sluggo? Everyone just called me Sluggo from that day on.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it was great because, a one word, Sluggo, like Prince, like Madonna.
Yeah,
There must have been 6 Robs at the skate park that day. And I guarantee if I just was going through life as Rob, I wouldn't have been remembered like
yeah, and you've got skate decks with Sluggo on the bottom. Like it's rad.
Yeah,
it's a good name.
It's really good.
Someone told me like it's from the cartoon, and then I looked and I was like, okay, yep, that's
Sluggo and Nancy is from the Sunday Morning Funnies from the newspaper.
Yeah.
And I had no idea who Sluggo was for the longest time. Like, I'm just like, Sluggo.
You're like, I'm Sluggo.
It wasn't a term of endearment when he gave it to me.
No, but then it becomes, it just becomes, that's what nicknames are. You got to kind of hate them, or they have to be a little bit mean, which that is, but not really. It's not that bad.
Yeah, I know. Quite honestly, I was like, wow, he's talking to me.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah, exactly. He knows my not name. Yeah. He knows
named
my
me.
nickname. Yeah.
I'm a puppy.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So in the thick of your snowboarding career, the whiskey thing happens, and RDS builds out of a completely separate thing. But the Red Dragons and whiskey kind of happen at that same moment in time, right?
Yeah, my snowboarding, skateboarding, and Red Dragons all came to a head at about the same time. 95 was like right when it started popping off. Like,
I remember seeing the RDS that someone had painted on the side of the Ivanhoe, and Byron, my buddy Byron, who's a stuntman you work with.
Byron Briscoe.
Yeah,
a good friend of mine.
He pointed it out and he said, "You know what that is?" And I was like, "No." He's like, "That's Red Dragons." And I was like, I don't know what that is.
Yeah, that was probably Sam Devlin painting that on the side of the Ivanhoe, I bet.
Yeah.
We had the skate shop around about 95, and we had all of our T-shirts and hats. So we had a skateboard shop, a small clothing brand. I was a pro snowboarder and a pro skateboarder all at the same time.
Right.
So everything was great. Like, that was an amazing time.
And you didn't skate and snowboard for the same company, so this is...
No, I was still pro for real skateboards and riding for Division 23 at the same time. I think I was riding for Airwalk, so that was the crossover.
Yeah.
And
Did you have Airwalk shoes as a sponsor as well?
Yeah, of course. I was pro for Airwalk for skateboarding before snowboarding, and that was the first carryover one. That's how I got to go to Mount Hood that first year, summer camp, and bring Devin.
Yeah. That would have been a fun trip.
It was an amazing trip.
How old were you? Because Devin was just a kid, and you're my age, right? Like, so you would have been early 20s?
I was 23, 24.
Yeah. And he was like a high school kid.
He was like 18.
Yeah.
Maybe younger.
17, maybe even.
But
yeah.
He was my ride.
Yeah, that's what he said.
So he drove me there. I'm like, you can't bring anybody to this camp, just you. I'm like, yep, no problem, except for this guy. And so I did. I brought Dev, and like they thanked me so much after that. They're like, man, he blew up from that trip.
Yeah.
I think you might have talked about it on your podcast.
Yeah.
But like you went to the next trade show and it was all, you go into the Airwalk booth and it was like billboard-sized Devin Walsh is from
insane.
that trip.
Yeah, that's epic.
I think he was riding for Barfoot.
Yeah, he was getting Barfoot boards at the time.
John Boyer. I think he was
Through
John Boyer's boy.
Yeah, and he told me, he asked Chuck directly for a couple more, and Chuck was like, "Yeah, hold off," like I'm not seeing any.
I'm not seeing any.
I don't see dollar signs when I see you, kid.
It's funny. Everybody else did.
Yeah.
Oh, Chuck, you missed the
Chuck,
boat.
Man. Poor Chuck.
Barfoot would maybe still be around.
Oh, definitely would. Yeah, could you imagine? Yeah, just because the logoing was so. That's one thing Devin talked about. He's like, he didn't want to go to Never because he'd grown up with Barfoot being so fucking cool.
Yeah.
Like Ken Ock and all of everybody from, everywhere in Canada, there was so much Barfoot. So, yeah, it could have been a completely different world. They had a great graphic designer at the time, too. The boards were epic. And, yeah, that happened.
He made them look good, that's for sure.
Yeah, he made them look really good. Yeah, you were mentioning it while we were walking down. You ride with Devin one time when he was a kid, and you're like, no, this guy's better than anybody.
Well, when they said, hey, you can't bring
Style-wise.
anybody, I'm like, well, if you guys are bringing me.
Yeah.
I don't think you get it, because this kid's ridiculous.
Yeah, he really did usher in a whole other way of snowboarding looking on the mountain. Like, that discipline to be like, okay, I landed that. That's cool, but it didn't look exactly how I want. It didn't feel how I wanted it to feel. I'm going to do it again. Let's try again. Let's, like I'm sure he could probably even direct a photographer. Oh, it's going to probably look good.
Oh,
from
he could
over
for
here.
sure. He knew what was going to look good. And I don't want to take away from Jamie Lynn, but he was like a teched out Jamie Lynn.
He was, yeah.
I think he emulated Jamie Lynn.
He loved him.
A lot of guys did, but
Yeah.
he did it spot on.
Totally.
And he even added his own twist to it, and he looked great. Like,
yeah. When I met him, he was working on switch stuff.
He was all switch.
When nobody could do it,
really
he couldn't even do it.
yet.
Some people still had directional boards,
Yeah, exactly.
He's doing everything switch, and you're like, oh shit.
He was a good skateboarder too.
Yeah,
like a really good skateboarder. Like had a good tray flip, and he was a better street skater than I was for sure.
That's rad.
And one thing I forgot about is me, Kevin Young, Devin, and myself. We all rode for West Beach.
Oh yeah, right.
And that was my other crossover sponsor, and Chip Wilson. Chip Wilson was really good to us, really good to his snowboarders, really good. And I was the first skateboarder on West Beach for both.
Rad.
And they sent Kevin Young, Devin, and I to Japan a couple times.
Oh man.
And
that would have been
that
such
was
a good
so
trip.
fun.
Yeah.
So fun.
Were there people like waiting for you at the airport yet? Was it that?
It wasn't
kind of
that
era?
gnarly, but once we got to the resorts, they had film crews and everybody waiting for us. It wasn't just snowboarding. It was like, we had come to town.
Are you nervous riding with those guys? Because, I mean, I would be. They're both really fucking good.
I didn't know well enough to be nervous. I just did my best. I held my own. Like, I had my own thing. Like, I could do a bunch. I was really good at spinning, and I was really good at flipping.
Flipping, too,
and
yeah.
They didn't really flip.
Right,
right. And just because I looked horrible, all you had to do was ride away, and they were happy.
People are cheering, that's great.
I could spin pretty good. I couldn't make it look good, but I could ride away from 720s
you can make it
and
look
540s.
good. You're fine. Yeah.
I might be being a little hard on myself, but I am
yeah.
talking about Kevin Young and Devin Walsh.
Correct.
Right? And
yes.
these guys were so good. Everything they did, they looked good.
Right.
Like I was a gingerbread man in a straitjacket
and
a lot of the time.
You know as well that you're insanely good at skateboarding.
I'm comfortable with my abilities.
Yeah. Like you have an incredible air awareness. You've invented shit in skateboarding. That's nuts.
Yeah,
right?
I've been lucky enough to invent a few tricks.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It's pretty cool.
Because of the sheer number of people that are involved in skateboarding. There's a very small number of people that get to claim, okay, I invented that.
Yeah.
Right? Like a lot of times there's like simultaneous inventions of stuff. But like that, I remember first seeing the flip and being like, you got to be kidding me. That's not possible.
Yeah, I was pretty stoked. Doing it was cool. It was cool because once I did it, one of the people that came up to me and was like, "Wow, we've been dreaming about doing that for a decade." Is Lance Mountain.
Rad.
And Lance Mountain and Steve Caballero, Tony Hawk, all the Bones Brigade members were our heroes.
Totally.
And they meant a lot to us up here in Canada because of Kevin Harris. Kevin Harris would bring up all the Powell guys. Like Lance built the first 2 skate ranches.
I know. He talks about it in public domain or something.
Yeah, he talks about it in the Powell movie where, the one they did with all the Bones Brigade movie.
Yeah,
you know, he talks about coming up here. And so he was our friend. And Steve Caballero was our friend. And so these were the best skaters in the world.
That's
and they
crazy.
were friends of ours.
That's
like,
crazy.
To this day, like, I talk to Steve once a week, like maybe just DMing on Instagram.
Yeah.
And wishing you all the love in the world. Steve, I know you're coming back from a spiral fracture femur. He did motocrossing about a month ago. Yeah, he's a tough son of a bitch.
Yeah,
so he'll be fine. But yeah, it was really cool to have people like Lance Mountain say, "Hey, man, good job. We've been thinking about that trick for a long time, and you did it."
That's insane.
Yeah.
Yeah. So family-wise, it seems to an outsider that obviously you had a lot of support from your family. Did you ever have any trouble like explaining to the parents that this is what I've chosen? I'm not going to school, or maybe you did go to school. I don't know.
My brother and I were raised by my mom.
Yeah.
So a single mother raised 2 aggressive young men.
Wow.
And my mom is the most powerful, wonderful woman in the world, Helen Boyce. She was one of the first female welders in Canada in the 80s. She had all her certificates, and she worked in the shipyard.
Sick.
And so she's tough as nails. My whole family worked in the shipyard coming from Scotland. And she supported my brother and I in everything we ever did. And she got stuck with a couple of hyperactive young kids.
Yeah.
And so about 6 years old, my mom had us young. So I have a real young mom. She's only about 18 years older than me.
Wow.
Yeah. And so that made for a real tight relationship, I think, because we were so close in age. She put me in gymnastics really young, when I was 6 years old. So I was in gymnastics from 6 to 16.
Wow.
10 years. So that was the basis for everything I ever did.
Obviously, yeah.
And yeah, after, when I quit gymnastics, they all wanted me to be a world champion and go to the Olympics and all that stuff. But about 13 or 14, I figured, hey, I realized I wasn't good enough. I wasn't going to make it.
It's a lot of work.
It was a lot of work. And then I realized Canada has never done well. And then I found out Russia and China have like hundreds of gymnasts that can smoke all the best gymnasts we have in Canada. The reality hit, right? And so then I started breakdancing. And that was where Mom would have been like, "Ooh, what are you doing?" Because I was spinning on street corners for nickels.
Yeah.
Every weekend.
Putting down like cardboard and doing
ghetto
the real
blaster.
deal.
And my brother and I would breakdance for money from tourists in the Victoria Inner Harbor.
Come on.
And we did that for a couple years. And we make good money. On a Saturday, we'd make $40.
That's incredible.
All the American tourists would come up and they'd throw quarters and dollars at us. And I was a bit of a showman.
Yeah.
Like I'd get up and like... I'd walk around with a hat after breakdancing. It was rad.
That's amazing.
It set me up for life.
Yeah.
It really did.
Yeah.
And so Mom supported Dave and I with anything we ever did. So no, she knew I wasn't academic, and I never was. In high school, I think I skipped more classes than you could get away with without being kicked out of school.
Right.
And after Expo 86, it wasn't like I was wondering what I was going to do with my life. I saw Expo 86, and I'm like, I'm going to be a pro skateboarder.
Yeah.
I'm going to get paid to skateboard. This is what I'm going to do.
That's super rad.
My mom didn't need to see that dream. I knew my dream.
Yeah.
I followed it. I went to the skate ranch every day, every single day. Take the bus from North Vancouver all the way to Richmond, and I would skateboard. And I never missed a day because I'm thinking maybe today's the day I land that new trick. Like it was always that. Because of gymnastics, I had a training, an ethic of I really wanted to make it. And gymnastics taught me that as long as you keep trying something over and over again, you'll eventually get it.
It's closer and closer.
And I just applied that to skateboarding. And it worked really well. And then I applied that to snowboarding too. And like I'm talking smack like I sucked, but after a few years, I knew how to snowboard. I got much better.
Yeah, you're a solid snowboarder. You were on World when World was a team to be on.
Yeah, it was cool. I left Division 23 to start World Snowboards with Steve Rocco.
Oh my God!
And then I went from Steve Rocco approached me on Division 23 and Real Skateboards. He's like, I want you to come over. and run our snowboard program.
Sick.
And be pro for both sports. And I'm like,
on.
and the money they offered me then, because World was as big as it could be at that point. Like, it was skateboarding World. You couldn't get bigger. You know, Kareem Campbell, Day1, all the best guys in the world. And they had more money than sense. So they started throwing money at snowboarding, thinking it was going to, because everybody was. That was just the way it was back then.
Yeah.
And he had Duff's shoes.
Yep.
And he's like, and I want to give you your own signature snowboard boot.
Oh,
and so I turned out to be the first snowboarder in the world with a snowboard boot, a signature boot. Duff's made me a boot while they gave me a snowboard. They got me to handpick the team.
Yeah.
So I got Sean Johnson on there right away. Mark Frank Montoya, Gabe
MFM.
Crane, myself, and they were throwing big money at these guys.
Yeah,
you
I
know,
think
they left all their sponsors and came over to World.
Yeah, MFM talked about his bargaining chip. He had left like a smaller, like a local company that was making boards, but they had made him one. Right? Like a prototype. Yeah. And so he kind of was like, I've got a pro model already. And so then when World offered him a pro model, he was like, yeah, sure. Like, you know, some of this stuff is very mental. Like when you're a kid, your taste is killer, right? Like you're reading the magazines, you're watching the movies, and you know if you're up to snuff or not, you know?
Totally.
So like when you're not, you can kind of sometimes that reaching or promising more than you know you can deliver, then you have to do the work. And it looks like MFM killed it with doing the work, right?
He's a successful guy. He's smart with his money. And
totally.
Over the years, he's made some really great decisions, obviously. And I think maybe riding for World was one of them at one point. I don't know if you ask him that now, if you think so. But it was really good for me.
He loved it, yeah.
All I had to do was surround myself with guys that were way better than me.
Yep.
And my job was done. And I did that.
That's important to know.
Yeah.
A lot of guys, especially in these sports, it's a very egocentric sport, you know? Like it would be easy to, you know, and a lot of guys do it, you know. Tony Alva puts his name on the boards right away. And that's kind of a giveaway that the guy is going to be, you know, like if you had made Sluggo boards and then started to pull on the team, or like anyone that's done it, we've watched them do it. And you can make it happen.
Right.
There are a few Jamie Thomases out there that, you know, are better than most
of his riders.
Most people that he puts on the team.
At one point.
Yeah, not because he's like stacking it with lesser riders, just because he's that fucking good. But it's rare. That's way more rare than the other way, where you put your name, Chuck Barfoot, on a board, and then you don't want anybody to kind of outshine you.
That was the way it was back then. Like Kidwell and all all those guys. You put your own name on there. You branded yourself.
Right.
And I came from the skateboard world where you couldn't even wear your own T-shirt. Like you were mocked hard. Like as if I'm going to wear a Sluggo T-shirt. Like come on, how great do I think I am? Beat it, buddy. And so you would get chopped down if you did that. And I think I came from that. Like, as if I'd never start a skateboard company called Sluggo, a snowboard. No way. Like, no freaking way.
Right.
Another cool thing is when I was negotiating with Division 23, Shorty Snowboards was begging me to be part of their team at the same time. You know, so they wanted Kevin Young, Devin, and myself.
Yep.
And I was just like I really wanted to, because Tony Bualis was a good friend of mine who had Church of Skating and Shorties, and their skateboard team was ridiculous. You
Insane.
know, Muska and Sammy Baptista and all those guys. So I stayed with Division 23, and they paid me ridiculously well. And
well,
so
did
that
Division 23, it switched hands, and then you stayed with it after? Or?
No, I think I stayed with it from the get-go. Like Mark Morissette.
Yep.
And what was that?
Steve Blakely.
Steve Blakely, the vegan vegetarian fella, the DJ.
Yeah,
he was a nice guy.
Yeah, you got to get him on the show too.
And Peter Line.
Oh, Peter too.
Line.
Peter was that was like breakout for Division 23 and Peter. Like that, the Rainbow board, the Guar board, his sections, his parts in both the Mac Dog movies.
The Mac Dog movies just put him, like,
crazy.
he was insane. Like, he went so big, and he was switch too. He was a switch rider.
Yeah, he was one of those kids.
He was definitely my favorite from that era. Him and Devin. Like, because they're little guys and just shredders. And you know, I got to travel with Peter quite a bit, and he was a really cool guy. Still is a cool guy.
He's one of those guys that I actually spoke to about inventing tricks too, because he did invent some stuff in the beginning. We owe a lot to his like cork stuff, because that's what set snowboarding apart from skiing for those first 20 years.
Yep.
Because skiing was crushing us. If you were going to go head to head against a skier on a like skier jump, like big air,
right?
They were already doing triple flip. They were already doing triple corks, but they were calling them fulls, like 3 full flips with 3 full twists or whatever the hell they were calling it. And it looked lame. It was like shitty that they were doing that. And it was like, we couldn't even imagine snowboarding going that way. And then here comes Peter, and his upside down stuff is inverted, but also off axis. And it just blew minds. It was like, oh, you could do it wrong from the skier point of view, and it looks fucking perfect.
You skate, like, it was like gymnastics. It was a linear, right? Like
linear, yep.
And as soon as you threw it off axis, that was our signature. That was snowboarding at that point.
That was it.
And then they got to adopt that from us eventually, right? Mm-hmm. And I did this snowboard movie back in, it was actual Hollywood sort of style movie back in Canmore, Alberta. It never got finished. It went bankrupt halfway through the shoot.
Oh, no way.
But they hired a bunch of snowboarders. Tara Teagan was on there too.
Sick.
And so I met her. That's how I met her. She went to the Olympics in '98 for us. I think halfpipe. And so there's a professional ski jumper. And I said to him, eventually they're going to do twin tip skis, and you guys are going to take off backwards. And he looked at me and thought I was the biggest moron. He's like, they will never do twin tip skis, and they will never be taking off. And I'm like, they will be, for sure. And now it's like commonplace, right?
Isn't that funny? Yes, skiing they were so blind to what was coming. They would look at snowboarders and be like, this is terrible. We don't want anything to do with this. A lot of companies did that, like your Solomons or whatever. They were like number one in skiing, and snowboarding was crushing. And they're like, nah, we don't want a piece of that. We don't want to do anything with that. It's just a fad or whatever. Twin tip skis, forget it. They were stuck in this kind of linear, that exact thing. So now skiing, obviously, people are corking out stuff and off-access shit. Has that entered into gymnastics as well? Not that you're a gymnastics.
I think some has. I can't say for sure. I don't follow it as much as I used to.
Right.
I know you see, for floor routines and stuff, you'll see breakdance sort of orientated stuff in there, and sort of martial art features. But
more personality
it's pretty
stuff.
Conservative.
That's
still.
what snowboarding was personality. Like when you say you liked Devin and Peter Lund, when you watch their parts, they
stood out.
Yeah, and
the Mac Dog films, all those guys,
out.
they basically had a formula: go off a cliff, do a 360. These guys, they changed it up, and you could see there was that one year, I think 1993. 94 when their videos came out, their movies came out, and there was the Oregon kids. All the Oregon kids were in it, and they
Joey McGuire,
right,
Todd Schlosser,
Todd
Dave
Schlosser
Lee.
for sure, Dave Lee. Those guys,
God,
they changed the game. They really did.
And they came up here and wrote with you guys too, right?
Yeah, I got to ride with those guys a lot. They were really good guys.
Yeah,
and they're all skaters, right? I got to go to Hood and ride with them at Hood and ride the camps there. So I did a lot of.
You seem like the one guy out of the Canadian West Coast scene. I mean, Kevin did it as well, and Devin to some extent, that instead of going to Whistler in the summers, you went south. Like you had a lot more going on in the States with skateboarding, I guess. So then Oregon just becomes...
I would go to Oregon, yeah. I can't say I did a lot of summer camps. I don't like riding in the summer. Right. I would go to a different hemisphere. Sure. I got to go to New Zealand, and that would be fun. Like, I got to go to New Zealand twice, I think. And I love that. Like, that was so fun.
I haven't been yet.
Justin Hosnick, I went with him.
Yeah.
And who else did I go with? What was the kid's name that won one of Turget's first big air contests back in 1995?
Oh, God. I don't know.
A really good skater. I think he's from Finland. That
could be
doesn't
Ika,
help. No.
Or it could be UC.
I'll remember before we're done, I think.
Yeah. Oh, there's also Ville. Ville's a Finnish guy who wound up in Oregon roasting coffee.
Oh, really?
In Portland.
Good coffee, I bet.
I'm going to try and go down and get him on the show. Yeah, probably awesome coffee. Yeah, the Scanners, the Scandinavians, when they came in, because that was a couple years after those Peter Line, Devin Walsh kind of years, then all of a sudden It was
Yeah.
like these guys came over, couldn't even speak English, but oh my God, they ripped.
Yes.
And put a lot of pressure on just the sport to advance, right? Like if you were a pro, I got pushed out of pro snowboarding by like actually not understanding how much work it was. You know what I mean? Like I was like, hey, I'm better than my friends, which I probably wasn't even better than my friends. I just thought I was. But like riding with Devin, I was like, I'm not going to be pro. Riding with KY and Anthony up in Whistler, I'm like, I could do this. I could go really fast and hit jumps straight. Like it's when you have to like have your gloves off and ride at everything backwards at full speed, I'm out. I'm totally out. So like I could imagine there was a lot of pressure on you guys as pro snowboarders once these guys came in and started doing shit that was just almost impossible, right?
I suppose the Devons might have felt it. I didn't feel any of that pressure. I didn't hold myself to that up that high. Like I was like,
did you
doing what I
compete?
had to do? I did. I went in one of the first West Beach Classics.
Oh, sick.
Yeah, so I
the
got
one that Johnson won?
I'm not sure who won.
Yeah.
I'm not sure who won that year, but I went in one. I didn't go in many. Went in a couple border crosses.
Yeah.
Shout out to my mom. My mom entered a border cross the day my son was born up Seymour. So my mom was in her 40s and entered her first border cross.
Oh, that's awesome.
So that was pretty cool.
Would that be that Kokanee cross?
Yeah, it probably would have been.
Yeah,
off Lodge.
Yeah, that was rad.
Yeah, no, really cool.
Yeah.
So cool. My son's born the next day. My mom does a border cross.
Oh,
super
man,
young
that's
family.
dope. Yeah, that's super dope. Yeah, Crystal from Intuition was mentioning that board you sold her at the cabin, and she's like, I also rode with his mom.
Yeah.
So
my
cool.
mom got to ride with so many people, and my mom would go up there a lot. Like she didn't miss a day for a few seasons, and she'd ride the lift with all kinds of kids, and she loved to say, "Oh, my son Bob" or "My son Dave."
She called you Bob.
My family calls me Bob. Yeah.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Wow.
Bobby. I was Bobby Doucette up until I guess I was about 15.
That's incredible.
Yeah, my mom remarried,
Yeah.
moved to Vancouver. I changed when I went to the new high school. I signed up as Robert instead of Bobby. Obviously,
Yeah.
signs up as a fucking Bobby, and my name changed from Doucette to Boyce, and so I was a brand new dude.
Yeah. What age was that?
It was 15, 16.
And you were already skating at that time?
No,
and
I didn't start skating until I was 16.
Oh, till you were 16. So that's the seminal year, basically.
86.
I've actually heard you say or read it in an interview somewhere that Back to the Future was one of the because it was a huge blockbuster movie, and then seeing the skateboarding in it, kind of just like you were like, hey, that's kind of neat.
Yeah.
I actually pitched it to the city of Burnaby because I was at one of the parks board meetings because they're putting a bunch of skate parks in there. I said, you better do a Michael J. Fox memorial, or not memorial, he's still alive.
He's still around.
Dedicate a park to the guy. You know what I mean? Because he probably got more kids into skateboarding.
He did. I don't know if he realizes that.
Probably not.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, because he
He's
did do
Canadian,
some of his own
that's
stunts.
Right. That's
yeah,
right.
yeah, from Burnaby. I went and I watched it again because it came on Netflix, and it's an unwatchable movie.
It's pretty rough, but bad. I love it.
Yeah.
I think Per Willender was the guy that did all the stunts.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, that's pretty.
So,
cool.
Did you know him a bit too?
Per Willender?
You would have known all.
I
of
would have
these
known
guys.
known Per in passing, but not really. Now I'm sure.
Yeah, because he was a freestyle guy, and you were a vert guy.
He was. I knew all the freestyle guys though, like Don Brown. Like he's still with Ennies, right? And Kevin Harris is obviously one of my better friends, and
there was some
Rodney
crossover
Mullen
there.
was at World when I was. So Rodney and I were on the same team, kind of thing, because he owned Dwindle, which owned World.
Yeah. Wow, that's unbelievable. I'm really excited to talk about the Rocco thing because I've watched that Man Who Sold the World documentary.
Yeah,
and it just seems like he's like a big kid or something. Like it's like if you gave the kid the keys to the candy store.
Yeah,
he was the guy doing that.
Willy Wonka sort of dude, for sure.
Yeah, was he pretty hands on in the snowboarding side of his thing, or did he? Just
No,
give it
he
to
was
you?
just skateboarding. He'd passed it on to Frank Messman. Do you know who Frank Messman is?
No.
Yeah. Frank Messman was the guy who ran World.
Right.
And he used to run PAL Europe.
Oh,
so he
dope.
brought him over from PAL Europe, and then he ran World.
That's
and
crazy.
And he still runs a lot of massive companies in the States.
Yeah. It's funny how it's kind of breaks down into those people, right? Like you mentioned Peter Sullivan.
Yep.
He became, he got into that distributor way, right? Like, and
he was my business partner at RDS.
That's right.
Yeah. He was working for Girl Skateboards, and then he had a meeting with Colin and I and said, "Hey, let's open up a skateboard shop." And so we opened up RDS. And after a couple of years of having RDS, we started Center Distribution.
Center, yeah.
And then started distributing DC Shoes and World Industries and everything.
I remember when it was in East Van still.
Yeah.
Like we would go
1971 Pandora, yeah.
Yeah.
That was our first spot way back many
And it was
years ago.
tiny. Like you'd go, there was like a little warehouse, and it was like, as a shop that bought from all different distributors, these new distributors have great brands, but you're going in going, oh, I hope they can pull this off, because they might need way more space. Like the number of shoes we're going to order is going to fill up that warehouse. They're going to have to just...
Yeah, we were tiny at first, but we grew real quick. So we had the one warehouse. Then within a year, we bought the warehouse or rented the warehouse next door. And then we moved to North Vancouver and got a massive warehouse. At one point, we had 3 warehouses because DC was so big.
It was so huge, right?
DC was
Did you
massive.
ever ride for DC or?
No, because I was the Canadian distributor, I sponsored myself happily, and so my best friend Colin, he had his own signature shoes, so I would ride a lot of his shoes. I'd ride all the shoes.
That's rad.
Kalis and Stevie, and
it
was fun being the distributor for DC because we got to bring all those guys up all the time.
Yeah, they were here a lot.
Yeah,
and when DC got into snowboarding, they hit it hard.
They did. They went deep. And they're still there.
Yeah, they're still crushing it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Because they still pay Devin.
yeah, they do.
And they should for the rest of his frickin' life.
Yeah, that guy is so good.
He should never not get a check. He's like a Steve Caballero. He should always get a check.
Yeah, we've talked about it on the show. A bunch of us have talked about how skateboarding, surfing more so even, like takes care of its legends. Maybe not, though, when you think about it. Like there's a certain threshold. You have to have had a certain kind of fame and been a certain kind of
and that's Devin.
Person.
That's Devin for sure. Like Steve Caballero, like he's the guy who's never left his sponsor.
Right.
He's been on Powell 40 years.
Since he was a little kid. Remember those?
Yep.
Like he was a child.
Totally.
Yeah.
He never left there. He's only ridden Powell boards. And
Van
he's been
shoes.
Van shoes for 30 years.
Yeah.
He's got his signature Vans for at least 28 years or something like that.
Forever. Yeah, since I was a kid. I skated cabs. They were epic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like
countless pairs of cabs for
Yeah,
sure. And
yeah.
that's, I ride
Half
for
cabs,
Vans. One of my
yeah.
sponsors now is still Vans.
Oh, sick.
They're really good to me. They send me, I just got a package the other day. I feel like a little kid anytime I get a box of Vans.
Yeah, same.
Yeah,
same.
It's cool.
Yeah, it's crazy the way those companies, because some of them, like Airwalk was amazing. So you're watching Airwalk going, okay, this is going to be forever. Or maybe not. We didn't really think like that.
No, it was first generation skate shoes, so we had no idea where it was going to go, what it was going to do.
Yeah, remember they had the Ollie Airwalk guy. They had the Airwalk A.
They had Tony. They had Jason
Tony,
Lee.
Jason.
Yeah, they had a really good team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They had the first epic team, more so than Burton even, in snowboarding. Because they could have every single pro from every single company. They just had everybody. I remember Jimmy Scott telling me that their boots were designed by their team riders. And I was like, okay, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
That's why they're so good. But then they did the thing. I always talk about them as the example where they got greedy and they didn't want to just be boots anymore. So they started making boards and bindings and outerwear and underwear, and you just go, what about your boots? Your boots were the best. Like 2 years ago, every boot you made sold out. Right. And now your boots are kind of whack.
Yeah.
What happened?
They just overextend themselves, They just don't have enough talent in there to produce the stuff they need. They should just concentrate on what they were good at.
That's what I always say to people. I'm like, yes, just don't pull an Airwalk. Don't try for too much. And Vans did it at one point. Steve Van Doren has told the story of his uncle took over from his grandfather.
Yep.
And said, oh, it's a shoe brand. We're going to go against like Nike. Like we're going to stop with this, silly skateboarding and BMX thing, and we're going to go like mainstream.
Yeah.
And within a year, all the styles were whack and nobody wanted Vans anymore.
They sure reinvented themselves, didn't they?
They did a great job.
Man, they've done such a great job.
You know what it was? It was a Vans Triple Crown. So they said, we're going to do surf, skate, snow. We're going to do events all over the place. And we're going to throw back to our heritage and move forward building on our a solid foundation.
They support a lot of Canadians, Vans Canada.
Yeah.
All the contests they do here, the Vans Park Series and all that, like the one they're doing in Montreal in about 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Like, they do a lot for Canadian skateboarding. And
the Off the Wall was good, too.
All over the world, yeah.
Yeah, up at
House
Seymour.
of Vans. And they just had House of Vans at the plaza.
Sick.
Yeah, that was cool.
Could you believe, like, when you think about that first Slam City Jam or second Slam City Jam at Plaza of Nations?
Like 94, 95.
And, yeah. Like the idea that building that was going off at the time would one day just be like this kind of ghost building, that we were going to have a skateboard event, that every room was going to have like skateboard features in. I wouldn't have believed it. There's no way.
It's cool because that property, I worked at Expo 86. I worked at Boston Pizza. So when they had the World Championships there, I got to go there and help them build the vert ramp all throughout the night. And then, 86, and then go to 9 years later, they're having another World Championships there.
Yep.
And 2019, I'm at House of Vans there. So many, many years, 33 years of skateboarding right around the Plaza of Nations.
Right at that spot, yeah. Such good
cool.
heritage. Yeah, so let's talk a bit of RDS. It's still going strong.
RDS is going strong, yeah. We're doing really good.
Where did that come from? Like, because I have an idea it came from, like, just a group of friends.
It was just a group of skaters from Vancouver skating together, having fun, and then just Red Dragons, we kill you. Yeah.
Fuck shit up.
Fuck shit up. FSU.
Yeah, that's awesome.
There was a whole bunch of original Red Dragons, but I guess the ones that really made a name for it would be Colin, Moses, and myself, because we were traveling internationally.
Right.
And calling ourselves the Red Dragons, and we represented Canada, Vancouver, for the most part.
Sick.
And that's and Colin came up with the logo, and it came from the book The Red Dragon, the prequel, I think, to Hannibal Lecter.
Yeah, the Silence of the Lambs.
In that book, the killer had carved the RDS logo into a tree. So Colin took that logo from the book.
Wow.
And made that our logo.
Did you ever get a cease and desist? Anyone ever call you and be like, hey, man, that's my logo?
As a matter of fact, funny enough, we trademarked it, obviously. Mm-hmm. And then they made the Red Dragon movie years later, and nothing came of it.
That's incredible.
So they didn't trademark the logo because it was just a logo from the tree in the book. They would not have ever known that.
Right.
And, I guess something sketchy could have happened. Nothing ever bad happened.
Right.
Wonderful.
And, you guys had the shop down on Lower Lonsdale, and then the shop got bigger. And when did snowboarding get in? Your brother brought in the kind of snowboarding stuff to Red Dragons, right? Like
the outerwear.
The outerwear, yeah.
Yeah, my brother, because he did... he worked at a couple other companies doing their outerwear, right?
Yeah.
United.
Yeah.
And so he came over and took over not only our outerwear, but our skate line.
Yeah, he did he did the designing, yeah?
Yeah, he does everything. My brother does everything to do with Red Dragon. He is Red Dragon.
Yeah.
If it's made, he does it.
He's the Red Dragon.
He is. These days, he definitely is.
Yeah. And so you've got all these irons in the fire. What's been your... I'll tell you this story because you're a big part of it. I was at Boardroom. I'd been there for a dozen years, and I was ready to kind of move on.
Yeah.
I think I just was talking to you, and you said, hey, I've got a job for you at Center. You should run the warehouse. And I was like, great. That sounds like a totally different deal than what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Something that I'm up for. I love the brands. I love the integrity and the skateboarding. And you're like, okay, you got to do an interview with Colin's dad and the chief financial officer.
Lan, maybe.
Yeah, it was Lan. That's right.
He works at Herschel now.
Oh, does he?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, and it was like, this was an intense interview. These are real professional.
It wasn't a skate shop interview.
No,
it was massive. Like, we were doing DC, so we were doing $20 million worth of stuff a year or some crazy.
So I'm like, I'm here for the warehouse manager job.
A couple things are getting mixed up.
Okay,
there. No,
probably.
By that time, I ran the warehouse back when we first started about 20 years ago. By the time you're talking about it, I was running center.
Yeah,
I was
center.
running actual center distribution,
Yeah,
not the
yeah,
warehouse.
yeah.
I was nowhere near
You
the
were
warehouse
way
at that
above it.
point.
Right, center.
And yeah, I didn't want to run. I was only there in the interim because when Peter Sullivan left to run super distribution,
Right.
I took over the job, and I was like, man, I do not like sitting at a desk in front of a computer.
So that's what I thought I was applying for and interviewing for, but they were like, no, we're interviewing you for a sales job, going on the road. And I was like, I don't think I can go on the road. I would rather sit at a desk.
Yeah, no, I never had to go be a sales road warrior.
Oh God,
that would be a tough job. I'm not entertaining every night.
And to all those guys that do it, there are certain people, and Center's had some great ones.
Really good, like Sid Clark.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, it's tough.
But
it's tough being on the road that much. For sure.
I remember leaving that interview going, oh damn. But that was cool meeting Colin's dad.
Yeah, Jerry, he's our mentor for sure.
Yeah,
he's a really good man. If it wasn't for him.
You guys had that place dialed, and that's back in 2006, 2007.
Yeah.
And it's just grown from there. That was just the start of everything, you know?
Yeah, when you're doing DC, it takes a lot of work. Like, that was a massive undertaking back then. And Peter Sullivan was really good at his job. Mm-hmm. And he got that place running like a fine watch.
Yeah, it was incredible. Because I came from Boardroom, which also had a distribution, but it's the boss coming in going, it looks an awful lot like this room. Like, we're going to have stuff over here and those things go over there. And then I go, but what if we need to find something? Well, then you call me because I know where it is.
Yeah, I wasn't meant for working at a distribution or trying to run it or anything of that stuff. It didn't align with me at all.
That was kind of the tail end of like the time where an average person's career, that would be the end of it. Now you've transitioned into working in a warehouse, but you were still out. Oh yeah, we should talk about the stunt stuff because you got deep into doing stunts, probably like quite a bit before that.
Well, that's why I couldn't work at center.
Yeah.
I just wanted to be a stuntman.
Yeah, you were physically like you were just like in the best shape of your life, and
I'm in the best shape of my life right now.
Still, yeah. It's crazy.
I really just wanted to be a stuntman, but Jerry, Colin's father, he really thought I should go in there and try my hand at it.
Yeah.
Because I knew everyone in the industry, and I was well liked, and I love skating, I love snowboarding.
You have a good personality.
But I did not like being that guy. There was a lot of responsibility. You had to hire, you had to fire, and I had to fire a couple of guys, and it was emotional, man. It sucked doing that. I'm not built for that.
Right.
I'd rather give you a hug and tell you everything's going to be okay. And so I learned the hard way. Like, Jerry's like, you got to fire him. I'm like, I don't want to fire anybody. And that was the defining moment for me. I'm like, I can't do this.
Was it a friend or was it
just somebody I knew, and everybody that worked for us was a friend.
Right.
Especially at first, because we all grew this company together.
Totally.
And some people had been there a long time, and there was no longer a reason for them at some point. And this is either here nor there, but I just didn't want to do that. I couldn't be that guy.
Yeah, no, it's
And I was, as you say, very physical, coming from gymnastics, breakdancing, martial arts.
And you
skating
had the
and
RDS
snowboarding.
skate park at that time. That was like a big
I wanted to skateboard.
Gift.
I did. I wanted to skateboard. I wanted to hit the ground. I wanted to get lit on fire, thrown downstairs, hit by a car. I wanted to. I wanted to be in the movie industry, and that's what I do now. Right?
Yeah.
That's what I love doing. I show up at work every day, super pumped to be there. I just wanted to transition from skateboarding and snowboarding to something that was similar, and that was stunts. I tried my hand at business. I didn't like it. I walked away.
Yeah, that's rad.
Yeah.
What kind of movies have you been in? You've been in tons.
Oh, yeah. I've been in 25 years. So I've at least a quarter of the movies or TV shows that come to Vancouver I get to perform on.
Yeah.
Whether that's a little bit of acting or stunts or stunt acting. Right now I've got myself into coordinating. So I coordinate the stunts. I hire the stuntman. I make sure the actors and the crew are safe. I break down the scripts, make a budget, present it to production, and that's what I do day to day these days.
Incredible.
I'm working for Facebook Watch. Facebook Watch is like It's like the Netflix of Facebook. If you have a Facebook account, you can...
I was thinking that sounded kind of ominous, like Facebook is watching you kind of thing.
They definitely are. That's Facebook is, if you're doing anything on Facebook, you're being watched.
Yeah.
Cambridge Analytics
watch.
knows exactly what you're up to.
Yeah, totally.
But it's just a TV series called, I just did one called Limetown with Jessica Biel.
Rad.
Last year, I did that for 3 months. And then right now, I just started one for Sacred Lies. Sacred Lies Season 2, and that runs to September, and it's super great.
How is the stunt work? I mean, probably a lot of the people who've listened to the show have thought, I think I could be a stunt man. Yeah.
No, I think anybody can do it if you come from a background with athletics. It's timing. You can't be shy in front of a camera. You have to take direction well. It's easy to fall down once. It's really hard to do it 6-7 times in a row when your body's telling you, no,
like,
don't do this anymore.
It.
And then you'll get it from one angle, and they'll go, okay, going from another angle, turn it around, and you do it again, and you do it again. So you have to either get really good at not getting hurt or just have a really high pain tolerance, right? And you don't last long unless you're really good at figuring out how not to get hurt.
And
And you can't just get into stunts. You have to be the very best martial artist. You have to be the very best motocross. You got to be the best race car driver. You know, you only get into stunts. It's pretty nepotism to a certain degree because it has to be in your blood. Yeah. You have to watch your father before you do it. You know exactly how the industry works, and you can't just show up and be a stunt guy. It's really, really difficult.
Right. Would you let your kids do it, you think?
My son's a stuntman now. Yeah.
Wow. Cool.
Yeah. He just got back from Toronto. He did It too.
Yeah.
And he doubled one of the guys out there. And that fella, he's coming here to do a show this month. So he's doubling him on that movie too.
So sick.
When I called you up this morning and said I was free to do this, I had just dropped my daughter off on set. She got the supporting lead in an independent film called B-Side.
Rad.
That she's playing a little girl skater from the 90s.
No way. That's awesome.
Yeah. So she went and did an audition, then she did the skate audition, and they loved her, and she got that.
That's so much fun. Yeah, I've seen your daughter on your Insta feed, too. She's been crushing
She's
lately.
got a better kickflip than me, for sure. She's got a really good flick. Yeah, both my kids are just amazing. Liam and Araya, they're amazing. 21 and 17 years old. They're the best trick I ever landed. Yeah,
that's sick.
By far.
That's amazing. So, and I wanted to talk a little bit about the RDS skate park because from conversations I've had with you and heard from other people, like essentially you gave Vancouver back a skate park. Personally, like you, because you paid the lion's share of what was going on out there.
I can't say I did. Collectively, Colin McKay and myself and Kevin Harris, we spent $750,000 building this ridiculous skate park, like 27,000 square feet out in Richmond.
Yeah,
it was when we had the Grizzlies basketball team.
Yep,
it was their training facility, and so when they left town, that place sat empty. So we went out there. Jerry McKay actually set it up. And so we partnered with Kevin Harris, so Center Distribution and Ultimate Distribution. We partnered up and built a massive street park, massive vert ramp, a bowl and a mini ramp. And we produced some of the best skateboarders of this generation, Ryan DeCenzo, Scott DeCenzo, Mickey Papa. Like, these guys are at Street League now. They're at the Dew Tour now. They're killing it. They're going to be the guys representing Canada at the Olympics. And that all came directly from the RDS skate park. So that's a massive feather in our cap. Like, we did that. We helped these guys get to this upper echelon of skateboarding, representing Canada all over the world.
It's one thing to go into building a skate park, kind of like Kevin Harris or like Emmanuel Krebs out in Quebec City, like young and naive. Because, I mean, I'm a numbers guy. I run numbers through my head.
Yeah.
I look at a skate park and go, holy shit, dude, if this is $10,000 a month, then that means you got to, just to pay for that rent, you've got to make, whatever, however much a day. Okay, divide that by, we're only charging $10 a person to skate. This place has got to be fucking overcrowded just to break even. Because when you're skating a giant street course and there's 20 kids in there, it's too many kids. You know what I mean?
If you'd go there on a Saturday or Sunday, there was hundreds of kids there.
Hundreds.
It
Yeah.
was packed, and
Yeah.
we were breaking even.
Yeah.
Our rent was about $28,000 a month.
Jesus Christ.
And somebody came in and bought that piece of land, that building, and they raised the rent $5,000. And that $5,000 threw us out of wonk, and we
Yeah.
couldn't break even anymore.
Right.
And we were there for 3 years, I think.
Yeah.
And, it was doing great.
Great
and we were
3
giving
years.
back, and I think the skate shop helped because the skate shop would help bring up the monthly tab. And
Sure.
yeah, as soon as they raised the rent, we had to walk away. But the place sat empty with the ramps in it for another 2 years before they re-rented it out.
Did you break in from time to time?
Oh my gosh, I wish. It was hard to know our ramps were in a warehouse all the way out in Richmond.
You didn't?
No,
Oh,
we
I
couldn't
wouldn't have
get
been
in there.
Right, and then it's a liability if someone got hurt and you could get,
We didn't have the keys anymore.
Yeah.
They took the keys. If we had the keys, I would have been in there for sure. It was heartbreaking. But Kevin Harris took all those ramps out and put them in a warehouse, not set up, but put them in a warehouse up near Hope. And then I built a vert ramp and took some of the skate light and put it on my vert ramp.
Oh, I've seen that. It's out in
Maple Ridge.
Out in the
yeah,
forest
it's been
somewhere.
out there for about 5 years. The skate light holds it together.
Yeah.
It's crazy how good skate
Yeah.
light is. 'Cause
Skate light's
I can
amazing.
still skate it. I skated it about a month ago, and it still works great, but it's pretty rickety at this point because it's in a bit of a rainforest.
Gets soft out here. Stuff gets soft.
Yeah.
So do you still skate vert on a regular basis? Do you still skate on a regular basis?
Yeah, I skate a lot.
Yeah.
Especially since my wife skates so much
Oh,
these
yeah,
days
right.
and my daughter skates so much. I not only Colin McKay came to town for the Canada Games or Canada Day bowl contest.
Yeah.
And we skated it together.
Oh,
like
that's
they
sick.
called our names and him and I took snake runs together and ollied off MFP and
Nice.
really, really cool. So that's 33 years I've been skating in that contest. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's nuts. That's
yeah, I
great.
still skate all the time, man. Like if you look at my Instagram,
Yep.
yeah, I'm always on my board.
I don't see much snowboarding on your Insta. Like, is snowboarding kind of back burner now?
Back burner,
Or
yeah.
is
I
that-
take my kids snowboarding.
Yeah, it's a family
One of the things
thing.
snowboarding did for me is it beat the living shit out of me. Like, I never hurt myself skateboarding. I only hurt myself snowboarding. Like,
Really?
I blew my knee at Big Bear. I broke my back at Big White. I broke my wrists up Seymour a couple times. Like,
Yeah.
no, I always was getting hurt just because the jumps, we didn't have anybody teched out building any of the jumps
No.
back then, right? And you just hurl and you'd land flat or you'd land in something pitted, and
Yeah.
that's just the way it was. It was it was a different world back in the early '90s, back on the hill.
How
hurt
do
myself a
you
lot.
how do you feel about social media? Do you feel a change in your own attitude towards it? I'm just asking because I've started to realize that I'm building a following for this podcast on socials that
Yeah.
they're monetizing and asking me if I want to buy.
Advertising.
Not just advertising. Would you like to put your posts in front of your listeners? Mm-hmm. Because if you give
Promote
us
it?
some money, then we'll put it in front of them. I'm like, well, I built that list. Why wouldn't you just be putting it in front of them anyways?
Yeah.
And then I'm realizing if I say no, they're going to sell it to the next snowboard podcast over. I don't think that's all right. I feel like that sucks.
I've never been faced with that because mine's just personal.
Right.
And it's just me and my family, It's
Right.
me skateboarding.
But you've
whatever
got tens
I
of
do.
thousands of followers. Like, people friggin' love you, dude.
Yeah, I've been around for a while. Like 2011, I think Instagram popped up, and
Yeah.
I've been doing it. I don't have that many, but it's just a fun thing. I definitely scroll through more than I should some days.
Right,
When you're on
right.
set and you're between shots,
Yeah.
you run out of things to do. You've had every conversation possible with the other stunt guys. You know each other.
Yeah.
So you end up scrolling through. I don't have Facebook on my phone, but I have Instagram. I don't. What's the other one? Twitter.
Tweet,
I
yeah.
don't tweet. There's nothing I have. No one cares about what I tweet.
Me neither. I just never got into
So
it.
the only thing I have going for me is I can do a few skateboard tricks and snap some photos. So it's just me and my family, and I don't mind it.
What do you scroll on Instagram? Like, what's your feed look like? Lots
My
of skating?
feed is a lot of No, well, a lot of skateboarding, a lot of positive stuff, positive frequency shit.
Really?
Yeah, a lot of stuff like that. Healthy living, yoga.
How did you get into that
exercise.
stuff, like the positive stuff? You've always been a really positive dude.
Well, you can live your life one of two ways. You can be positive, you can be negative. And what do you get from negative? Nothing but more negative. And if you put positive out there, people suck it up and they like it and they love it and it feels good. It feels good to put a smile on someone's face. If someone's down and you put something in your Instagram like, hey, keep your chin up, and it's somebody that looks to you for like, oh, Sluggo saying fucking keep your chin up, man. Thanks, Rob. Like, I get a lot of those daily, like, hey, thanks a lot for your positive posts.
Yeah,
I
bro.
really, really appreciate that. I needed that today. And my life is really, really good. Like, I have a really ridiculously good life.
Yeah.
And I'm going to let you know that your life can be pretty good, too. I don't drink anymore. Like, I quit drinking a few years ago. I don't smoke weed. I try and keep really high vibe. That's my whole life. Stay high frequency.
Yeah.
Not in any, I don't think in any one direction. Like, I want this, I want that. I just go general. Like, I'm generally happy all the time. I stay happy. I don't worry about things so much because I used to worry about things, and no matter how much I worry about something, I never solve it through worrying.
Right.
It never makes it better. Life has always worked out for me, and so I'm pretty sure it's going to continue to. You know?
Right.
And anything, you could go through scenarios in your head or things that went wrong in the past or things that could go wrong in the future. But it's just now. All I really have to worry about is right fucking now.
Right.
And everything's going really good right now. So let's just stay here in the now.
That's words to live by, man. Yeah, there's a group of you guys. I'm thinking Dano, photographer Dano.
Yep.
I'm thinking Kearns. I'm thinking Peter. Like, that Sealand group of people, I don't know what was in the water in that creek that you had to go get your pads out of.
Yeah.
But there's a big number of huge personalities that came out of that era at that place.
Yeah, North Vancouver did produce a lot of real characters. My brother,
Orion too, actually, and your brother, yeah.
My brother Colin and Casey McKay.
Colin, Casey, yeah.
You know, North Vancouver, it
Dev.
really was. Sean Kearns and I joke about it sometimes. Like, you know, we have a superpower coming from North Van. And I don't know what it was. It was a really good synergy, and it was that period of time. And we took care of each other while giving each other a really hard time. It made us tough. I got bullied a lot, and, you know, people talk about anti-bullying movement. And of course, don't bully people. Be nice to people. But it was good for me.
Right.
It was good for me. It made me stronger. It made me resilient, and it made me deal with life. Like, life's not easy. You know, it's really not easy, but it's good to know how to deal with things when it's not.
Yeah, when you talk about your kids and getting them into stunts and snowboarding, skateboarding, I want my kids to do it. They do it, but I can't find it in me to be at the top of a cliff or the bottom of a cliff saying, yeah, the landing's good on the left, just go for it, you'll be fine. You know, like I feel like there is, I don't want to say bullying is missing, but some sort of positive, you know, pressure to do things that are scary or things that are making those split-second decisions. When you're being bullied and you're running and you're thinking, fuck, you develop a part of your brain that you don't see it in kids now. You just don't. It's
survival. And as far as my kids go, I never pushed them in any one direction.
Right.
I just gave them the opportunity.
Right. You were a support.
They chose to do anything they do.
Yeah.
And sometimes they chose to do what I was doing, and sometimes they didn't.
Right.
You know, there was times where I would like to have pushed both of them to do more skating. Mm-hmm. And I think if you were to ask my son, I bet he would wish I had pushed him a little more.
Sure.
But I never wanted to be that guy.
Yeah. It's a tough guy to be.
Because I saw it a lot. I saw the coach dads, and it never looked like a good time for the kids.
Yeah, totally.
And it takes away from what a great activity skateboarding and snowboarding is.
Right.
When I went from being coached at gymnastics, when I went to breakdancing, there's no breakdance coaches.
Right.
And I found that's when I could be the most creative, is when I was teaching myself to breakdance. Like, I'd watch a breakdance movie, I'd go out and learn how to do these tricks. I would do it with my own style, my own signature. And that was cool. I got to take that to skateboarding and snowboarding too. And so I gave my kids lots of room to do exactly what I did. And they carved out their own deal, right? And
Rad.
And that's what you want them to do. That makes them stronger people. If you can't help them.
You can't bully them into being.
No.
I mean, you can. You can make a Tiger Woods. You can make a Shaun White, but then
Yeah.
you've got a whole other subset of problems.
Different problems will pop up later in life. And I'm not saying they will for Shaun White or anybody like that, but you definitely, Tiger Woods had a few problems. And
yeah.
No. You just got to let people be themselves.
Well, that's what I was thinking when you were talking about, like, realizing in gymnastics there were these kids that were, and actually my cousin was, I think she was an alternate on the '84 Olympics. I can't remember. No, that would make her 7 years old. Well, she worked really hard. She missed all Christmases. She got up and she trained gymnastics her whole life, And I can remember seeing...
You miss out on a lot of good shit.
How much she was missing
because you're in the gym so much.
Yeah.
You really did.
Yeah, and also there's a moment that my aunt would go back to saying, when she was 2 years old, she loved gymnastics, so we put her in it and we pushed her. And it's like, I remember my 2-year-old kids, and they didn't love anything.
Yeah.
They definitely were not pushing us to put them into a program that would take up the next 12 years of their life. And
my mom was just trying to put me in a place to get rid of some of my energy.
Yeah,
and it went in the direction of competitive gymnastics. It wasn't like my mom pushed me to be a competitive gymnast in any way, shape, or form. It was natural progression. I got pretty good at gymnastics, then I got good enough they wanted me to compete.
Yeah.
And it went from there. I happen to like that aspect of it.
Did you like the competing thing? Have you been are you that guy at competitions where you're like excited for your run?
No, I'm a session skater. I'm a practice skater for sure.
Dope.
Like I could win practice sessions.
And a social skater, right? Like it's about meeting up with other guys that are great at what you're doing and having good sessions.
As soon as you say 45 seconds, I go a little noodly. At least I did. And, there was times I shined, but for the most part, I'm
thinking Hastings lately. Holy shit, dude!
Hastings, I skate that so much that there's no nerves involved. Like I love that place.
That's your
I know
park.
it like the back of my hand,
That's
and I'm
your
pretty
home.
confident there. And I'm not trying to impress anybody anymore. I'm 49 years old. If I can still do backside airs and things like that, people are just stoked. Getting to go in the Vans Park Series, it was cool because I think the first year I went in, I was 44, and like Tom Shaw and those guys were 14. And so I got to compete at the same time as the guys that are going to go to the Olympics. And
that's incredible.
That's pretty cool. Most of the guys from my generation never crossed over to park, right? They were just straight vert skaters.
Right.
So I'm like one of the oldest guys that got to be in the park events.
That's incredible.
Which is it was so freaking cool to be that guy.
Yeah.
My generation, they had all hung up. There's a lot of guys that still skate, like Mike Frazier. He's a really good skater out in Florida. He's still ripping. Then the guy's just a bit younger than me, like the Bobs and the Buckies. Like they're 5 years younger than me, but they're still like just as good as they always were. Andy McDonald, just as good as he ever was. Tony's a year older than me, and he can.
You see his 50 at 50. Did you watch that?
Oh,
that was
of course.
Just nuts.
I watch everything Tony does.
Yeah.
Like he's a huge inspiration to me.
Were there any? Did you ever have a time where you were like an Alva guy or Hosoi or like fuck the Bones Brigade? It's too mainstream.
No, I was always a massive fan of all the Bones Brigade.
Yeah.
Mike, Lance, Steve, Tommy, Tony.
Yeah.
Rodney and Kevin Harris. I loved everything to do with the Bones Brigade.
Yeah.
But it would have been Steve Cabb and Christian Osoyoos were my two favorite skaters. Yeah. And if I had another one, I'd add Chris Miller.
Cool. Yeah.
Chris Miller, he had the most power, the most style. He had grace. He looked like a surfer.
Totally.
When he was skating, and he was so good. And he's still so good. When he shows up at the Combi Bowl every year, he's still so good because all he does, I hear, is surf.
Right.
And I follow him on Instagram. His Instagram is @owlcat. And he just has beautiful pictures. He never posts skateboarding. It's just waves.
Crazy.
Just waves and sunsets and him and his wife. And it's just because you have to be in such good shape. He gets a full body workout if he's surfing every day.
As somebody who's been a pro skater and snowboarder, what is the conversation around like surfing, skating, snowboarding, and that community, and because everybody looks up to skaters, right? Like definitely in snowboarding, if you're a pro skater, people are like, oh, fuck, that's what I wished I was.
I wish I could be a pro surfer. Like, that would be amazing.
I feel like everybody has right?
I'd like to. I guess if I could choose snowboarding or surfing, I'd probably choose surfing.
Right.
Just because I'd rather be at the beach.
Right.
I love the beach. If you know me, I'm at the beach most of the summer.
Yeah, skimming.
Skimming or whatever. I don't really skim, but like when I was younger, I definitely would, because you're bored at the beach and there's nothing to do. I'm hanging at Wreck Beach drinking beers.
Yeah.
I'll throw a lunch tray down and slide on it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's such a limited thing that you could do
limited.
with those.
And that being said, the really good skimboarders, they can ride out to a wave and ride a wave. Like it's a different world than when I played on them 20 years ago.
Yeah.
But surfing, man, surfing's just so cool. If you're a good surfer, that's something you can do your entire life, and you can't snowboard your entire life. You can't skate your entire life to the degree. You still look. And on a surfboard, you look like a surfer your whole life.
That's true.
You certainly change on a snowboard, and you certainly change on a skateboard over the years.
Yeah.
The amount of stuff you could do falls away real quick.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, surfing also has a strong core and strong foundation of like rules, like style rules, and like. And just like being cool, like you have to. I don't know. This is a bad conversation for me to get in because I don't really know surfing that well.
Do you know who Joel Tudor is?
Yes, I know.
Well, I follow Joel Tudor, and he's a really good longboard surfer and a skateboarder and a Brazilian jiu-jitsu guy.
Yep.
And I've known him, I guess, about 25, 30 years now, a long time since one of the trade shows back, ASR back in the day.
Yeah.
I follow his Instagram, and his Instagram's just fantastic. Joel Tudor, check him out.
I will.
He has martial arts on there. He has all the generations of surfers. So he has like 80-year-old surfers, 70-year-old surfers, 60-year, and he talks about the history of surfing a lot. Mm-hmm. And so he's my connection to surfing these days. When I find out about anything cool, he puts on surf contests. He's got one of his contests is like one of the underground surf events. Because I guess surfing is very political in some way.
Of course.
I don't know this, but I heard it is.
Yeah.
And he's got some cool event, longboard surfing, and he's got so much style. That guy's a really good cat.
Yeah,
really good cat.
Are there some underground skateboard contests that are popping up? I mean,
well,
obviously
the dime contest every year in Montreal. Like I got to be part of those, and that was rad.
Yeah,
being out with the Dime Boys. There's events. If Thrasher has to put up a lot of stuff, and they have a lot of little contests. Like in Texas, they have contests. They have. Yeah. Copenhagen has a really cool event.
Very cool.
Me and Colin have talked about doing something.
Yeah, you should.
Kevin Kelly is putting on another Hastings event because Vans left Hastings this year and they've gone to Montreal. They're not doing one this year.
Oh, really?
So Kevin Kelly's doing one, I think, August 31st at the Hastings Skate Park.
Excellent.
And I'll be part of that in some
rad.
way, shape, or form.
Yeah, because that's been growing. Like that Vans event, it's chaos.
It's massive.
It's like, remember back in the late 80s, early 90s when they would do big movies like Thrashin' and like blockbuster movies, and the contest would be in California with like those grandstands. I remember being like, holy shit, if only I could go to California. And then you go to that Vans contest at Hastings, it's that.
It is that. It's like, bleachers around a football field.
It's crazy.
The football field's our bowl.
Yeah, when I moved here from Ontario in 93, every skater that I skated with was an outcast. Like, we were the losers at school. We were, like in a parking lot, a bunch of guys hanging around together falling down. Because, like you mentioned, in no other sport are you failing 90% of the time.
Right.
Like, that's like going to watch a soccer game and kids are like falling down, kicking the ball off the field. Like, it would just be ridiculous.
Right.
For an outsider to watch skating, we look dumb. And I move out here and it's like you and Colin and all the people down at the new spot are like jocks. It looked like you guys were the ones that were running the high school and had all the girls and were like, it was a different vibe out here, it felt like.
Yeah, we had a niche market. Like,
yeah.
I was definitely from the generation of jock skaters, and that's just coming from being a gymnast.
Yeah.
I knew how to take care of myself, and I wanted longevity, and that's why I do still train and take care of myself and do a lot of yoga and stretch and go to the sauna every day is because I love skateboarding. I want to skateboard as long as I can. I want to be a stuntman as long as I can. So the only way I can do that is to take care of myself, you know.
Totally.
And you know.
Yeah, how big of a difference is there between you and a lot of your friends that you get together with that are going into their 50s that haven't been professional athletes their whole life?
I hang out with a lot of like-minded individuals, and so a lot of them take care of themselves. And for the most part, all of my friends are really healthy living folk.
Right.
They don't party.
Right.
They're vegans or vegetarians.
But I mean, I mean, those old RDS movies, there was some partying going on.
Oh yeah,
right?
there was a lot of partying, and Moses, Colin, and myself, we were a different generation than a lot of the kids that were in those videos, and those kids went through just like they did with the whiskey days, and just like the Seymour kids.
Yeah.
There was a party era. Like when they're in their 20s, they hit 30, and when snowboarding goes away, you can't party anymore. You got to get a job, you get married, you have kids, and then you settle down.
Yeah.
And so all those Red Dragon guys, they've all settled down. They have wife and kids. And Mike Hasty, and he has a farm out in Ladner with a mini ramp, and he works for the city, and he's got beautiful kids and a beautiful wife. And, you know, that's just a phase of life, partying. And so you eventually, that fades away.
Right.
Hopefully
becomes less
does.
Important. Yeah, and we all know some people that keep it going.
Yeah, we all do, and bless their heart.
Yeah, exactly. If they can make it work, good for them.
Yeah.
You know, I think there's a level of happiness that you have that you might not know. It's not normal that that you're this happy. Most people are kind of dismal and taking antidepressants and trying to figure out, like, you know, they twist their ankle just walking down some stairs, and then that's their life
the end
from
of their
now
career.
on.
Of course.
Yeah.
And I've gone through ups and downs, but I don't, you know, wear it.
Right. Okay.
I've gone through divorces, I've gone through heavy injuries, and I've gone through financial setbacks, but nobody gives a shit.
Right.
That's the bottom line.
Right.
So why tell anybody about it?
Or define yourself by that. That's not the
can't,
definition of who you are. Right.
Yeah.
You got to keep moving. I like the positivity thing. I like that when I mentioned MFM, you're like, yeah, that guy knows what he's doing with his money. Because he got a little bit of bad press just with some of the snowboard kind of media outlets were more like clickbaity, you know, like MFM's a pyramid scheme guy or whatever. But if you actually look at what he's doing, he's making a lot of money. He's trying to teach other people how to make money. And if you meet him in real life, he's one of the nicest people you'll ever meet. He's just like,
he was always really cool to
person.
me. Mark Frank Montoya.
Yeah.
I always loved his name.
Yeah.
He's a good snowboarder, and you got to go for yours, man. And nobody has to do what he's asking him to do, or you know, putting forward for possible business opportunities. I don't know what he's doing. I'm not exactly sure what you're talking about.
He's life coaching, and he's just
life
basically
coaching is fantastic.
Yes, it's incredible.
Go for it.
Yeah,
if you can uplift anybody in any way, shape, or form, go for it.
Yeah.
A lot of people need help.
Yes.
A lot of people do need help.
Totally.
There's a lot of sheeple out there.
Yep,
and
there are.
Unfortunately or fortunately, that's just the way life is.
Yeah. Well, a lot of times,
very few leaders.
Yeah. Last year, and I don't consider myself a leader. Last year with the podcast, I talked a lot about not drinking, because for years I was drinking just like habitually, like 6 beers a night. I'm not like beating my wife or missing out on opportunities with my kids. Maybe a little because I'm hungover. But I just was like, I'm just going to try a year off. And this is the second of, you know, like I got to the end of the year and I was like, what do I do? Do I go back to drinking every day, or what am I going to do? And I was like, fuck it. It is really nice to wake up with no hangover, but more for me, like you see how I live pretty humbly. It's nice to have that extra $15-20 a night every day of the fucking week. Like it gives me more money to be more free. Plus I'm sober, and I don't have every night marked off on the calendar to go home and just drink until I'm drunk and then fall asleep. So my point is, in saying that on the show, people reach out and they're like, you know what, I might try not drinking for a week or a month or whatever. And I got that idea from Sober October on the Joe Rogan podcast.
Right on.
And I think when you hear people talk about how it changes their life, you go, yeah, maybe I'll try it. And if you just try it and you like it, then great. And the main thing I would say about it is I fell off a lot of times. Mm-hmm. Like I thought I would try it, I thought I was trying it on years that I was drinking every night. I would tell myself, I only drink a couple nights a week or whatever. And then I was faced with the fact that, holy fuck, I'm drinking every single night.
It's good you recognize that. A lot of people never do. And they don't have a reason to pull out of it. Like, we live in Vancouver. We live in Canada. And so for 8 months of the year, it's raining and it's dismal, and it gets really easy to fall into a pattern of drinking every night or smoking a lot of weed and playing video games. Yep. And you go, I'm going to get to it later, or I'm just going to play this video game, or I'm going to do this, that, and the other, and my ankle hurts or my knee hurts. Totally. And you can fall into that rut, and a lot of people never pull out of it. Yeah. I was really active, and I was feeling my body not reacting the way I wanted it to, and I'd still be drinking. I'd go to the beach, I'd have 6 Corona, and I'd be dehydrated and wake up and go, why am I so sore? And then injuries started happening. I'm like, that's it. January 1st, I'm quitting. Yeah. And it was the best thing I ever did. Rad. Like, best thing I ever did. Yeah, good. I'm so happy I quit drinking. And did you go to a 12-step program or anything? You weren't at that level, were you? No, I didn't have to do anything but just stop drinking, and it was hard. Same. It was hard. Yeah. Because I'm really social. Socially, it's really difficult. Yeah. Going to dinner and having wine or having a drink. Totally. It was made it easy. That was the hardest thing. Social situations got more difficult. Yeah. And a lot of people fell out of my life. Yeah. A lot of people I'd hang out with all the time, and I'd find, well, the only common denominator is the booze. Yeah. Yeah. And that's just the way it is. But it's okay. It is great because other things fall in line. Like, my wife doesn't drink. Cool. Anybody I hang out with, lots of people. Like, I go to lots of functions where people are drinking the whole time, but I don't even notice, and they don't notice I'm not drinking. Right. You think, everyone's going to think why isn't he drinking? No one knows you're not drinking. No one's paying attention to you at all. Who gives a shit? I had a social anxiety issue where I was like, I drink because socially I'm awkward, right? Not awkward, just like I need a little bit to prime the pump. And then you go sober and you realize, oh, fuck, you prime the pump and then you're drunk, and you forget that if you hadn't been drinking, it would have gotten a lot less weird and awkward in a few minutes anyways. Sure. It's still awkward. You get there and then there's nothing wrong with being awkward. Yeah. Who gives a shit? Be awkward for a second. Yeah. Play with the moment. Totally. Oh, this is awkward. Yeah. This is hilarious. Yeah. And how much does it matter? Yeah. It doesn't matter. Yeah, and nothing fucking matters. People keep offering me drinks and stuff when I'm at places, and I'm like, no, it's cool. Like, I've tried my best not to make anyone else feel bad. You're wandering around the House of Vans, for example, and everyone's like, oh, you want to go get a drink? I'm like, sure. Do they have kombucha here? Right. Like, I'll have a water. And then as long as you're just sipping on a cup, they forget. They don't care. Nobody gives a shit. Nobody cares. That's what it comes down to. Is cares. That it really if it's somebody cares, the social part is a shitty excuse. It's a bad if that's excuse. The only reason you're still drinking, there might be a problem. Because by the end of the night, when you look at the way drunk people socialize, that's not what you want to be doing. Sure, I've seen enough of it. And I don't fault it, but you really see it more when you're sober. Yeah, totally. Like, I've been to 3 weddings this summer so far. Yeah. And, everyone starts off, because, weddings, nobody really knows each other. Right. But by the end of the wedding, everyone who doesn't know each other is wasted and dancing away. Yeah. It's you see it there. But totally. It's fun. It is fun. I enjoy it. And because no one knows you're not drunk, too, you can act... Sure. Like, dancing around and being fun. Dance around, Nobody knows. You're not going to wipe out. Nobody knows. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much for talking with me. I really enjoyed this conversation. It was really fun, Eric. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, I really appreciate it. Stay positive, and everybody, where do they follow you? Where do they get your stuff? At Sluggo Boyce is my Instagram, and anything you want to promote that these guys can go and buy or support. The podcast audiences are great. They really do love supporting the guests, and it's a great medium. I appreciate that. Yeah, Red Dragon. If you want to support a Canadian skate brand, Red Dragon's one that's treated me well. Vans Canada. I love all that stuff. Yeah, if you don't have it, you don't have to buy it. But love you all. And anyone that's been a fan or helped me out over the years, I appreciate you, and all the best. Sick, dude.
FNRad shoutouts this week to listener Henky Donnerborg. Thanks for buying a wired board and reaching out to the show with kind words and praise and telling us how much you like the board. Henky's from Sweden. Hello to all our Swedes out there. Right on. Also thanks to just every listener who's ever reached out, because everybody has said nice things. That's amazing, and it makes me happy to do the show. So be sure to come back next week for another episode of the FNRad Snowboard Podcast by SIA Productions.